In legend, there existed a slum, Kowloon City, once a den of filth, criminals, poverty, and dystopian visions, has been a mystery to many of you, and me included. Occupying a site of only 240 by 120 meters, it housed over 35,000 residents and towered over 14 stories. At one point, Kowloon City in Hong Kong held the world record for the most densely populated settlement on Earth. There was no rules, no law, just pure anarchy. That begs the question, what if the same could be built in Songs of Syx? To make the challenge as realistic and doable as possible, I'd only be restricted to a rectangle size of 120 by 240 tiles. I could place this rectangle or city block wherever I pleased, and I wasn't allowed to build any buildings to do with law or policing or detainment. This was supposed to be a criminal's underworld. With that being said, I immediately started a map with a river, ocean, high fertility, and one mountain to localize all resources into one area. This would make it easier for me to be more self-reliant and get all the industries up and running. I wasn't sure where to place the Kowloon slum, but ideally, I'd like to access forest, fish, ore, silicon, gems, mountain tiles for building houses inside of mountains because of the race I was playing, and coal. I cannot build outside of this area in solidarity to Kowloon City, but however, I will allow myself to forage and hunt outside of it. The main source of food will be fish, as there is an ocean nearby. Oh yeah, there's plenty of clay nearby, as at a certain point, I'll run out of farmland and I'll need to research a lot in improving efficiency in food supplies. The start of the challenge wasn't hard. I mean, in terms of fisheries and hunters, this wouldn't take up much space, and I didn't have to worry about city planning just yet. I'm also assuming a tile is 2 by 2 meters, as dead bodies in the game fill up a tile, so this made sense to me. Plus, doubling the actual size, I think, would make the challenge way too easy, as this would quadruple the amount of buildable area I had. This is called a challenge for no reason. Even when I was first placing the first buildings, I also ensured I would be as compact as possible and was only going to use 1 or 2 wide roads to place torches, benches, statues, and columns. I also didn't care how the city looked, because this was a slum after all. I wanted to make everything compact, so I basically attached the warehouse to the side of 4 houses and kind of wrapped around it because I wanted to minimize the amount of pathing. The carpenter as well took the shape of any available space. I then built the hunters for easy access to leather and meat, as I was also limited by the amount of space I could place pastures on. I could only build 2 pastures on the entire map, so anytime I unlock a new title, I immediately invest it into improving food production, as I'm limited by space, so the percentage differences really do matter here, as well as woodcutters as well. There's only a small forest and I'm building on most of it. So I then build a mushroom farm, since Dondorans love eating mushrooms, and you know, I started off small. I don't really want to fill in most of the mountain with mushroom farms. However, soon enough, the honeymoon period was over. As soon as I ran out of pastoral lands, the size of the pastures and woodcutters would be something to keep in mind. I was then forced into the mountain. I then basically expanded into the mountain with a few roads and, you know, a few perpendicular roads as well, so that proximity wouldn't be affected. I placed a few houses in there. There's also a lot of ore in there, so I'd build on top of that. So yeah, I just keep on expanding the housing. The tailor. You know what? At this point, I basically start taking large chunks out of the mountain because I decided to place my square far away from the stone deposits, and you know, I couldn't really reach that with the dimensions that I was given. So yeah, I placed down a warehouse for all of this ore, so there'll only be about 2 main warehouses for all the essential items such as food, clothes, leather, wood, furniture, you name it. I then placed down the market since my Dondorians, they were getting pretty unhappy, so I needed to do that. I then placed down some torches as well, while obviously not trying to block off any of the passageways. I then built another large fishery. It was a really strategic location since the geometry of the deep water allowed me to basically cover a lot more edge tiles, so I was able to get more deep water, hence improve production of, later on I'd have to upgrade this a lot. I then built the clay pit, as I was running out of space and I wanted to improve efficiency and food production as much as possible. I then started on coal production since there wasn't really much room to expand, so I guess in my mind I thought that maybe metal production and tool production would be the way to go, and then from that point onwards I could start selling it. So yeah, I added that. I had an ore mine as well. I then reached a lot of innovation points, so I basically spammed on the fishery, a little bit on the pasture, and a bit on woods too. And I reached 200 population. I had to build down the training ground, but unfortunately, due to my Dondorians being so lazy, they're usually not this lazy, but they didn't get it built in time, so a raider approached me and I had to pay up and give them the ransom money, unfortunately. Knowing that I had very little space and I needed leather for leather armor and clothes and whatnot, I had to build the Auroch pasture directly on the water. I also built another mushroom farm with the very little space I had. I could build some small houses there, but small houses, they're really inefficient in terms of population density. What you want to build to achieve a high population density is the long houses. They hold the most people per tile. I then built a gem mine. This is quite an easy way to earn a bit of revenue. I think in the future, at this point, I was going to rely on mercenaries since, there's not enough space to build training grounds and I was probably going to be limited by population. So at this point of time, I was thinking maybe I can expand to another territory, tax them, get all the resources back here, and maybe delete some woodcutters so I can build more. So I kind of went with this while having my own home troops for self-defense. So I trained everyone to 0%, but later on I'll change this to 10% since 0% is not really that good. It's good in large numbers, but 10% or 20% is really what you want, but it's gonna take you a while, especially if you don't build that many training grounds and you have about 600 people wanting to train up or waiting in line for it. I then unlocked herb farms so that I could start work on ration production. I was going back to the idea that I could use some of my home troops to essentially take over other free cities, but on the map I'm kind of surrounded by large empires. I decided to give myself a challenge. However, about 2 cities away, there was a ton of free lands to which I could pick and choose what I could take, and at that point in time I was thinking about having a combination of mercenaries and my own city troops. Most of the mountain had already been dug out, and I immediately started placing houses at the other end, and as you can see, it's already looking very, very dense and messy and chaotic. Kind of what I wanted to achieve in this Kowloon City experience, but of course I waited a little bit. I placed down some more houses. At this point of time, on the western side of the city, I was trying to squeeze in as much as possible, so any small piece of land I was on the lookout for. It became kind of sad, to be honest, but there we go. I built another mushroom farm since that's a food that the Dondorians liked. I didn't research it heavily at that point, and mushrooms tend to grow a lot better in colder climates. In my mind, I had to do anything to get my happiness up and food at the same time, even if it was a smaller amount. And of course, at this point of time, I kept on increasing the amount of Dondorians that were working in clay clay pits and increasing the amount of lab workers as well, all in the efforts to increase the population, increase food supply. So anytime I'd increase the amount of workers in clay pits, I'd also have to increase the food supply, and that would also increase the population, and then that cycle kind of continues. So yeah, I reached a point of time where I could build my first ration maker since I'd gathered enough herbs. I was kind of conflicted whether to use meat or fish, so I built two and used both. Obviously, I'm limited by land, so essentially most of my meat was turned into rations. However, this did not affect happiness that much. The Dondorians still had a little bit of access, but they could have had more, but they don't. They choose to live in this lawless hellhole, I suppose. Finally, I unlock nobilities. This is a huge boost to food production. It's kind of obvious where I place these. I place these in the clay pits because that's going to be used for more knowledge. I don't need as many workers in the clay pits anymore. I also placed them in woodcutters, in auroch pastures for more leather and meat, in fisheries, and also in mushroom farms as well. I also unlock silicon mining since Dondorians, they absolutely love it. In my mind, I was kind of thinking maybe this will boost work fulfillment and also boost a little bit of revenue on the side. Plus it can also be used in battle, so I placed one down. Oh yeah, I built a stage since I forgot to do that. And I also built a very small graveyard since that provides a little bit of happiness, but most dead bodies are actually put in a mass grave. So yeah, I then build a warehouse for the rations as well as any armor. At this point of time, I was really running out of space, so I had a decent amount of workers working on gems. I was thinking maybe I don't really need to expand gem production that much, so I saw a bunch of fertile land with some fresh water and decided to place meat production on there as well. But at this point of time, I was really running out of space. There was only 2 patches of land or cave that I could actually build on, and I wasn't willing to sacrifice so much space for ore. I then built another mushroom farm, taking up one of the last patches of available land I have. I then placed down some more labs. As you can see, I can't really copy and paste the standard ones I was using. I have to use 3 wide labs to actually get research to boost food production, so it came down to a point where every time I placed the lab, I'd only be able to boost food production by about 10%, which is still good. However, I then placed down some torches as the amount of people that moved in was influenced by this. So yeah, as I was preparing for battle, I quickly did a save as, and I wanted to make sure that there was enough people in the city that they could also be homed, because I was at a point where I was also running out of land for housing, and due to the lack of space as well, I had to wait a very long time for my troops training to increase by like 2%. Eventually I gave up, and they had 5% training, which is fair enough. I had earned enough money to get some really good archers into the squadron, and I went to war with a free city. Most of my troops, they can actually train up, so all of them died. However, my mercenaries had managed to survive the fight by kiting the enemy for several days. Eventually I took the city, and I immediately started taxing wood. After this, I could finally delete a lot of my woodcutters and then replace them with either entelodon pastures or housing. Now, the land that trees grow on isn't very good for farming, but it's still 80% of what you would usually see on tilled ground or, you know, rich soil. Rich soil provides a 1.1 times bonus to any pasture or farmland. I could then also expand the labs as well. This is a very victorious moment for me, and as you can see, I could continue to expand. I added some more torches. I unlocked pillars, which was also a happiness boost to the Dondorians. Oh yeah, a while ago, with the 3 knowledge points I got with each title, I also managed to get a hospital up and running as well, but not a physician. I also managed to upgrade the only 2 toilets that were in the city as well. Theoretically, I could keep on going. Let me know if you want to see part 2 in the comment section. So yeah, this was Kowloon City in Songs of Syx. I'll see you next time. See ya!